So last week we were working with Ruby. This week we're moving on to databases. We've been using a language called SQL. Now, as far as I'm aware, there's two types of languages, and this one's the table-based version. There's a non-table based, which is NoSQL. But we're sticking with this version, and we're using a setup called Postgre. Now, we've gone through Monday straight away, getting into all the different ways in which you can call queries to that database, how to load that database. Um, but really, the reason we're here is because we're moving on from doing our applications in the command line, where as soon as you close the program that it's done. We've moved on now to a place where you're going to create this persistence. So now you can see the chronological kind of order we're doing that on the course, where eventually we'll be able to produce a full stack project, obviously full stack engineering course. So that's the aim. So let me show you a few of the things we've been getting onto this week. The setup, these are all things that I've picked up from the notes that we've got on GitHub from makers creating our databases, some of the key features, and then we move. So then we move into areas where you're creating queries for these things. So you'll be able to have your seeded database. That's what you call that when you've put all of your entries in there, and being able to pull back in the particular information you'd like. So we've got, if I see using select here, this kind of information here. So knowing the syntax that you're going to need to do that, and I'll show you some of those in a minute. For example, let's copy this one here. That will come in handy. So we've got for music library. Here's some of the work that I was doing. So you can see we've had lots and lots of databases we've built working our way. What I've liked particularly about this is I have seen and worked with some databases before, but on this course, we're really making sure that we're doing this in a test-driven manner. So I'd never done that before, where I was managing to use sort of tests to make sure that we were actually getting the results we expected each step of the way, doing this in an incremental sort of evolutionary manner. So let's have a look. The music library, probably an exercise we spent most time around. If I just give you a brief overview, we had so we've got artists and we've got albums. So we've got a database where we place all of this information in our music library, but it's got two tables, and one for albums and one for artists, but those get linked. Okay, so let's just have a look with that. CD music library, let's go in there. So you'll notice down here we've got an app, so this ties it all together. So you can see here we've been working in the command line. Now we've been working with databases, and towards the end of this week we were managing to put these two things together and test it. So from the command line we've got all of these entries here, and I want to show you now. If we go ruby app.rb, you can actually interact with this now from the command line. So welcome to the music library manager. What would you like to do? List all the albums, list all the artists. So let's give ourselves a bit more space for this. Enter your choice, 1, and there we go. So that's produced the list of all of the items that we've got in the library, and you can work on it. If we go back, not only has it pulled this from the library, in this code here, it works through that, pulls that information, and we've got there, you can see there IO puts, we've got asterisk, album ID, album title. So we're taking each of those records, and we're like from the database, and we're actually printing it out in the manner in which we want. Let's have a look. So this is one of the tables we had. In fact, that's something I'm working on at the moment. I'll tell you more about that in a moment. So the music library, so this is what I was talking about. So here's where it came from. So we've got all of that seeded data and the artist that it comes from. So what we've been doing as well, now remember I saved earlier some information. Let's get rid of everything there. If I paste that in, let's have a look at that again. So it says select title from albums where artist ID equals 1 and release year is greater than 1989. One thing I have learnt this week, that semicolon is very important. Otherwise the SQL does not recognize when to stop. There we go. So notice we only asked for the title, and so that's what we got. Bossa Nova. So that is the only one of those albums that was released after 1989. Well, we had 1988, 89, 1990. That's the only one we've received back. Let's change this for the wildcard and see what's different. Notice, so this one says we want all the information, all the column data that you have. So ID of the, in this case, of the album, the title, the release year, and the artist that relates to. So this was quite useful for us during this section. But let's show you now. I'm working on something at the moment. I've got this, going to have this ready by tomorrow as far as I can. So we're working on a shop manager project now to see if we can place all of this learning we've done this week into a challenge. So let me show you first of all, before we go through this table, what I'm working on. So here's the README file for this. So there I've put in some extra notes, but the challenge. So what we've got to do, we forked this from the maker's website, and we've got some user stories that we need to work on. So as a shop manager, I want to be able to list shop items with the name and unit price, find their quantity of the stock, make orders, customer names, many other things there, create new orders. And so the goal is now for me to see if I can create command line access to build this. So the process, there's a little bit of spoilers here perhaps for when you get to doing this, but if I click on so this was my process. We've been taught during this time to try and use software to try and help us draw out how we believe these classes might interact. Now I have built on that. I initially had something like this, not too dissimilar, but further refinement of my project, and then started to move into, if I go to the top here, we start to move into sort of how we build it. In fact, it's the table I want to show you. Taking that and thinking, well, how do you break this down? How do you put this into, I see this as two separate tables. And so this recipe, if you want to call it that, is provided by makers, and it really helps us to break down the process of how you would go about actually determining what type of database it is that you're working with. Is it single table, two tables, one to many, or even a bit more tricky, many to many? Okay, so but all of that information we've picked up there from all the information they've got on their website. Let's go further into what I've got then. So let's have a look further down here. So again, we've been using testing to do this. So if I just use RSpec here. Great, so I'm quite pleased. So obviously I'm showing you this video currently because I'm at a stage in the work I've been doing. I thought I better show you before I get near the end and give too many spoilers. But so far I've created an item. It constructs with order ID and is the order ID is unassigned. I've also got an item repository. I've created a method with the list and a method to create a new item. I've got quite a bit further to go, but I just wanted to get this video out there before things got a bit trickier for me, and I maybe didn't get the video out at all. So things are getting harder to continue with videos, but I still want to keep this up so you can see all of the things that we are doing. So next week, so it's Sunday now, so tomorrow we're going to start the next section. We're actually going to use the project we've built here to begin working together in pairs to do code reviews. Something we've not done properly to this stage yet. Yes, we've looked at each other's code and done pair programming, but we've not gone into that process of actually working through pull requests, analyzing what's been done, what works, and writing up how we could improve on what our code is in these pairs. And that's before we move into the front end. So we'll start looking at the actual front end, how all these applications actually get viewed, build our own web applications, working on routing. So looking forward to it. Got to get my head down now, finish off that project. But yeah, I'll see you again for the next video.